For the past 59 days, Robbie Davies has been living in a tent in the middle of Penrith CBD. He intends to remain at his camp until medical professionals agree to operate on him. Robbie was born with cerebral palsy quadriplegia and has been confined in his wheelchair for the past 16 years. In 2013, he was given an above-the-knee amputation upon his request, but is now pleading for his entire legs to be removed.
I have terrible arthritis in my hips and bone spurs, which make it impossible for me to sleep in a bed with any kind of comfort. Also, because I can't sleep in a bed and have had to be in a chair, sleeping in a chair, my spine and neck are collapsing because of the extra stress of my back and neck have been put under.
With no running water and a broken hoist, Robbie hasn't had the facilities to even shower within the past 2 months. Instead, his carer Sam visits each day and washes him using sorbeline cream and a microfiber cloth.
So I let this soak in, and of course because it's not water, it's got stuff in it that actually get into the skin, and because it then moisturises the skin, softens it.
At one stage of the protest, Robbie and Sam's iPads were stolen from the tent. But despite the various setbacks faced, he and his dog Feather are determined to stay put.
All this is before his amputations. He's got really severe psoriasis, and it gets right through the groin when he's got pressure sores. That's what a carer did in Alloa House.
But because of Robbie's complex medical needs, the various surgeons that he has approached have told him that they are unwilling to operate.
Well, the fact is, the doctors that helped me have my above-the-knee amputation, they had told us that if I needed further operations, they would help me. But the two doctors refused to discuss it anymore. And so we thought we had no help for us. And so to avoid a painful death, we decided to come here to see if there would be anyone able to help us.
Nepean Hospital said in a statement that the surgery poses significant clinical risks that outweigh any potential benefit, and that the surgery could worsen Robbie's overall condition, making sitting more difficult, exacerbating his chronic pain and potentially worsening his scoliosis.
So articulation is when two bones come together to form a joint, like the knee or the hip or any other joint in the body. Disarticulation is when you purposely undo that joint, usually as a part of a medical procedure, which often goes along with an amputation as well. So a hip disarticulation, for example, so this is the hip joint, this is the pelvis, this is the femur bone, that's the head and socket in the pelvis. Disarticulation will be to undo that. A bilateral hip disarticulation is to do that on both sides. Now, a hip disarticulation doesn't just mean taking the bones out. The leg is a very significant proportion of your body. So when you take the leg off, which means you've got to undo all the muscles, all the ligaments, the arteries, etc. So it's a fairly major operation, and doing it twice is a very major operation times twice. So it's a big deal. So there's a couple of principles that underpin this whole situation. The underlying principle is that the doctor is an expert in their respective field, and they, based on the patient's story, clinical examination findings, imaging, or the basic assessment of the patient, will give an opinion on what the problem is and recommendations for management, and carry out that management if the patient's happy with that. So based on what the doctor thinks is right for the patient, not simply because the patient demands a certain procedure. So in the situation where a procedure is not indicated or deemed by the medical professional as not the right thing to do by that patient, then you don't offer that procedure.
But Robbie's carer Sam does not believe that to be a reasonable justification.
So they're scared that something will go wrong. But Robbie, over all these years, he's always stated that he will sign any legal papers, get a lawyer to absolve anyone of any responsibility if anything goes wrong, no matter how minor, even if he was to die on the table or die a few days later. Well, if his back's going to collapse, which it will eventually, you've got to try something. And world first. There's always a world first for every single procedure that we have now. Or look how many people will be dying every day. You've got appendicitis, people say. Women with their childbirth, you've got cesareans. So to say, again, they're using, it's discriminatory. Because they said he's got cerebral palsy, we don't know what the outcome's going to be. That's not a rational excuse.
Both Robbie and Sam will continue their fight with the belief that Robbie, as a 42-year-old man, deserves the right to decide his own fate. Ebony Boadu, Reportage Online.